We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. All right, BraveCo men, welcome back to the BraveCo podcast. This week, I have my very favorite man on the planet.
Your favorite father.
My favorite father. My own dad.
You only got one dad. Well, biological
father.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's true.
Gosh, Dad, thank you so much for carving out a whole bunch of time.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here.
It's almost Christmas.
Woo.
My favorite time of the year.
Well, probably by the time we release this podcast, it'll probably be Christmas. or something.
Yeah, this would be a Christmas special.
Yeah, we should release it Christmas special. Day, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, that would be good.
Everyone on Christmas Day, you could start out your whole get the kids around the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Before you open presents, we have to listen to the podcast.
Listen to Jay and Chris podcasts for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, then we should tell the Christmas story. Then.
Oh, it's a new tradition.
I don't think so, Jay.
Probably not.
No, I don't think anyone's going to want to listen to our podcast at Christmas.
I think that's true too, Dad. We've got a couple of guys that would like it.
Yeah, three of them. All three of them
would. Well, there's tons of stuff to talk about, and I was thinking of a bunch of different subjects that I like to talk about with you: adversity and how to build strength and how to be a strong man. And but actually, I got a whole bunch of questions from BraveCo men that they wanted to ask you. And so I thought it'd be cool if we go through and ask some of those questions, and I can throw some of my questions in there too. So it's not very often that we get to ask you questions.
And I can go, next question.
Yeah, we can pass on questions if we want. Yeah, we don't have to.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're just going to jump right in.
Okay, let's do
that. All right. How do you balance the tension between being a man who's uncompromising in character and faith, yet still have compassion for people around you?
Well, I think Jesus did a great job in that he hung out with sinners, and he didn't hang out with them and compromise his values. And it's funny because they invited him to parties,
Yeah.
So, I think it speaks to us of love that transcends opinions. And I think you can hold to your opinions, and I mean, you can have strong convictions. I don't think it's a question of should you be, undecided on passionate on important subjects. I think it's like, how do you walk out your life of conviction?
Yeah.
And what do you require of other people? And one of the things I think that happens when you're my age,
how old is that, Dad?
I'll be 69 next year, in January.
Ooh, you're close. So you're pushing on 70,
really
baby.
Pushing on 70. I think what happens is you realize that life is a journey.
Yeah.
And that, you're meeting people on different places of that journey. Let's say that the journey's 1,000 miles. And you meet somebody that has, from your perspective, really wrong positions. I mean, perspectives and convictions.
Oh yeah.
And you realize, like, a person may be 20, and you have 48 years of different life experiences, from things that happen in the Lord to things that happen in your life, and those things, they all shape you. And you're meeting someone on that 1,000-mile journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to treat them because you feel differently about, morality, or different about family, or different about, maybe they
Your
don't
faith.
even know the Lord. Yeah. And, I think that, Robin Williams said, you often forget what someone said to you, but you'll never forget the way they made you feel.
Mm.
And so I think that helping people to know they're loved, helping people to know that they're cared about, because people, they belong, believe, and then behave.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to often reverse that in the life of people.
Right.
We're trying to get people to
Like
believe before they feel like they're loved.
Yeah.
And so I think it was John Maxwell who coined the phrase, people don't care what you think till they know that you care.
Yeah.
So those things are all important. I don't think any of us, play them out perfectly.
When you say that's part of what being a nobleman is that there really is no nobility unless you have the opportunity, one, to do wrong.
Yeah.
But also to choose something right?
Yeah.
Like I look at Jesus and I go like, man, he was doing such noble things because he was able to be with a tax collector and be with a prostitute and not make them feel shame, but bring a message in a way where they felt loved and cared for despite their differences.
Yeah. And maybe even convicted, because conviction, true conviction says you're way too awesome to be acting like that. So, he sees Zacchaeus, who's been cheating people for years, and he says, "Hey, I'd like to have dinner at your house." And Zacchaeus climbs out of the tree and immediately like, "I'll give up to half of my wealth, and if I've cheated anyone, I'll." Jesus didn't even say anything to him except for like to have dinner at your house, And I think that conviction, I do think that conviction is a gift from God to all of us, and including the people that we are in relationship with. And I think that people often feel convicted over our lives.
Yeah.
Like they get around us and they're living a godless life. And when we get in their space, what we don't want them to do is feel condemned. Condemnation says you did wrong because you are wrong.
Yeah.
But conviction says you're better than that.
Yeah.
And so, I think that we should live in a way that helps people find their way. I was thinking about the woman caught in adultery, which everybody repeats that story over and over, and no one, very seldom does anyone finish that story. And Jesus said, let he without sin cast the first stone, and then everyone leaves. Then he says, "Did no one condemn you? Condemn you?" She said, "No, Lord." He said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and don't ever sin again." And he doesn't call "don't ever sin again" condemning her.
Yeah.
So, it's like sometimes we build a relationship with somebody where we do get to speak. Like we earn the right to, we have the value in their life, and we earn and favor, and we have the right to speak into their life.
It's part of leadership. Like when I think about Maxwell's, talks about the different levels of leadership. Of course, the first one would be positional, right? Like people follow me because I'm paying their paycheck and I'm their boss. But then that next level is permissional, right? Like you follow me not because I'm your boss, but because I add value to your life. You see me as a person of value. You believe that I care for you.
Yeah.
You want my input in your life. And I remember when I was firefighting, it was with guys who were non-Christians. And my goal was to get into that permissional place in their life where they wanted me to speak into their life, knowing that I had a different set of value system because they felt valued for, regardless of our differences. And so I feel like it's like a leadership principle of like, no, don't. Like nobility, trustworthiness, faith gives you access and even makes you credible to speak into people's lives who are living a different way because you have a solution and an answer that they desperately need.
Yeah.
If you compose yourself in a way that feels loving and caring. And I think too, like it says that kindness leads us to repentance, right? And I think when you start to fold in the kingdom message, it's like, man, it's kindness, it's love, it's a standard with kindness, it's a standard with love, it's a standard with, that's full of compassion and vision. You're way too good to be acting like this, and that's God's model for us. So
there's a young African-American man that I play basketball with, and he's about 6'9" or 10, maybe 9 or 10. And he's I don't know if he's a brand new Christian, but he's like 2 or 3 years old in the Lord, and he's on fire.
That's awesome.
He's on fire, right? But he's being raised by these guys who are anti, like they're definitely anti-Bethel guys. And
horrible people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all about Bethel's out trying to get your money. So, so he's like, can I ask you some questions? So the last 3 times I've been at the gym, he's like, can I ask you some questions? And, it's like, and the Bible says, and, you could tell someone's, prepped him for the conversation, and, Jesus wasn't rich. And, today he told me about the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boastful side of pride of life is not from the Father. And he's going on like that. And he asked me like 3 weeks ago, can we have these conversations?
Yeah.
So, today he comes up, and I had already, been thinking through, okay, we're having another conversation. And today he came up and he started this conversation. I said, hey, bro, here's the deal. I'm eager to have any conversation you want to have about the Bible. I wrote a book on wealth, so I know a little bit about the subject. But it doesn't feel like you're asking questions. It feels like you have accusations. And I don't know why you have accusations against me. Like, I have no idea what I did to make you not trust me. And I told him a little about our history, like 20 years when we were real, 17 years people live with us. I just went on kind of like, first of all, this is our journey of, being poor. This is our journey of generosity. And, this is how I got wealthy. Like, I didn't get wealthy ripping people off.
Yeah.
I wrote 15 books. We give away half of our income, half of our profit. And we I just went, and I'm like, so I when you're talking to me like I did something wrong and I'm having to defend myself, if you want me to defend the scriptures around, poverty, riches, and wealth, I'm glad to have a dialogue with you. But what I'm not going to do is defend my nobility to you, because I didn't do anything to deserve that.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, I need to repent for that. That's conversation. I mean, he's just
awesome.
a really sweet young man, super sweet. And I told him, man, I love your passion. And, I don't know what I did to offend you.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm fighting a ghost.
Yeah.
So I told him a little of my story, and he was like, oh yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I didn't hear that before. I'm like, oh, you never asked.
Yeah.
So, I do feel like part of, I think we have to, like, I don't want to be a passive man who just rolls over whenever somebody says something I don't like. And it's like, oh, we're all good, right? But I also don't want to be a dogmatic religious bigot that, has an accusation against people because they live differently.
Yeah.
And I want to truly love people. And Elon Musk said something this week. I know Elon Musk's not a believer, so and I understand his moral life is not the kind of life I would want to live. But he made a statement that it was crude the way he put it. But he's talking about that. I think it was like on Twitter, on X, whatever he calls it now. It's like Disney and some advertisers have gone off his
platform.
Yeah, off his platform because of the stances he's taken. And the person who's interviewing says, "Well, you've lost millions of dollars because people, boycotting." He said, "Well, F them." He said, I will not be manipulated by money.
Mm-hmm.
I will not be manipulated by money." And I'm like, okay, doesn't know the Lord, doesn't have the values I have, but he's like, I am not for sale.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I find it, here's a man doesn't know the Lord, but he's on and off the wealthiest man in the world. And he's like, but money is, you're not going to, like, you're not going to, like, I love the fact this man got wealthy, but he is not like, he doesn't care if he loses his wealth. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, wow, what happens when you lose your fear of dying and you can't be bought?
Mm-hmm.
You become an unstoppable man.
Or you're really depressed.
You kind of ruined my point, but exactly. Or you're really depressed. Some of the guys are like, I got that a long time ago.
I'm not afraid of dying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's
awesome.
Another side of that for sure.
That's awesome, Dad. Great. This is great. Listen, that was just the first question.
Yeah.
We're going to be here all week, man. I got a list of them.
No, sorry.
No, I'm kidding. You're great. No, this is awesome. Okay. What is the thing you see most often men get wrong in their marriages?
Well, I think there's a few things. Yeah. Obviously, if we, and I listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm like, yeah, that I would agree with, like, the way you're approaching marriage. One is, I think that realizing that life really isn't all about you.
Yeah.
And that's such an easy statement. And it's much more difficult in certain seasons, especially, to walk it out.
Yeah.
And, laying down your life for your spouse, and then later your children, and later on your grandchildren, and doing things that you don't enjoy because you love.
Can I make a point to that?
Yeah, you can.
Because I think a lot of men think they're laying down their life because they're going to work. For real.
Yeah.
They think, I work all week long for you,
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's easier to be at work than it is at home.
Yeah, especially if you're, when you're first learning and you're not super successful at home.
I mean, most men I know, the guys that I run with, even me, it's easier for me to be at work. This is easier than to be at home.
Yeah.
Because home, there's a million needs at home right now. I mean,
with little kids.
Oh my gosh. And even my older kids, right? There's tons of needs. And, my wife wants to emotionally connect and process through stuff. And like being at work's like, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
Or I know it's expected of me. I got to do 8 hours here. But I do think that laying down your life piece is often puts us in a place of so much uncomfortability if we're really doing it right. Like if I'm really laying down my life for my wife, then I'm sharing my emotions in a way that's uncomfortable. I'm telling her where I feel weak. I'm listening to her, where process, and I'm meeting her in that spot. Lauren's going through, a season of mourning because her mother passed away, and laying down my life, it'd just be so much easier to be like, I'll pick up another job, we'll make more money. That's the easy part. The hard part is, my wife's in mourning and she really needs time to process, or she really wants to process, or she's feeling hopeless today, or I got it. Like those are the things, or I come home and the kids just, they need me to wrestle them. And I don't feel like the last thing I want to do is my daughter says, Dad, can you be Chickalinda? Chickalinda is the horse. So not only am I the horse, but I'm a girl horse, apparently. Chickalinda, I think's a girl name.
You're the bride of Christ.
But I think you're right. Like laying down your life, I think guys get it wrong because they think laying down their life is, I'm going to work.
I make the money.
Right? But that is not laying down your life. That's an aspect of it.
It's part of it. I mean, if you're not working and you're listening to this and you're not the provider, then there's a place for you to grow there.
It's a baseline.
Your baseline, yeah.
But that next level of laying down your life is like Jesus. I think about it like Jesus. I've been watching The Chosen a lot, so I'm on a Jesus kick lately. It's the come follow me was like the baseline. Like I'm following you, but there's going to come a point where this costs you everything. There's going to come a point where you're not just watching him do the miracles and him get the persecution and him listen to the Father. Now you're having to step up to the plate and be the disciple where I'm preaching the message. I'm stepping out. I'm offending people. This is costing me my life. And I'm having to really see what laying down my life costs. So I think that's a fantastic answer is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I just had this idea. I don't know if it's accurate. You can push back, but getting married is a little bit like joining the service.
You only volunteer once?
You volunteer. And once you're in, like it is like, the sergeant has control of your life, and they may ship you off to Iran, Iraq, or, now Israel or Ukraine. Yeah. Like it's like when you said yes, you should have thought through it because this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too is, yeah, I have a wife that has Parkinson's, and so she's, doing really well, but she has limited energy and I need, so we could have a plan for, let's do this on Friday. Then Friday she wakes up and she has no energy. And one of the things that I'm learning, I feel like I don't have the lesson mastered, but is I can't just say, hey, we won't do that. I have to also make sure that she understands that I don't mind that we're not doing it.
Right.
I don't mind that we're, or you're
having to be uber flexible.
Yeah. But in a way that doesn't make her feel guilty or weak or, like, well, you're a problem. Because hey, just take a nap, man. It's all right. Forget it. We'll just do something later. It's like, no, I don't feel like taking a nap if that's the way it feels.
Yeah.
But, so, and when she got diagnosed, the day she got diagnosed, actually, I was in Taiwan, and what I heard immediately is like, the Lord said to me, no one should ever suffer alone.
Mm. Wow.
That's what he said to me.
Yeah. That's powerful.
He said, no one should ever suffer alone. I'm like, okay. So this is part of love, is that love suffers long. I get to learn about love, another aspect about love. And so, we're doing that together, and it's really been really beautiful, actually.
That's really crazy, Dad, because as you know, like I help a lot of guys whose marriages are hurting, and sometimes their marriage is hurting because their spouse is really hurting.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be so annoyed, even offended by, your spouse's whatever, trauma and pain and past life. And what a profound statement to think through, like, my wife's suffering. It's my job to be there with her and for her. And it's powerful.
Yeah. And, there's something now this is part I'm actually really learning. Mm-hmm. Like pain either bonds you or breaks you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't leave you the same.
No, it doesn't.
And so, it's either going to bond you in a way that covenant's going to grow deeper through understanding and kindness, or it's going to break you. Mm-hmm. And it may not break you tomorrow. It may break you 10 years from now as you slowly withdraw from their pain.
Yeah.
And when inside you're like, they have a problem. She has a problem. Not we have a problem.
Yeah.
She has a problem. And soon, there's someone out there that doesn't have a problem who gives you some attention.
Yeah.
And you and I, we know that really well because we help so many men.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
You're a good man.
I'm learning to be a better man.
Oh, you got a couple more years to figure it out.
I do.
You're almost 70.
Yep. I'm going to be like Enoch. He's so perfect. The Lord's like, he doesn't need to die. Just bring him up
walks with God and was not.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the most important parenting advice you would give to fathers?
Well, I'm on a kick right now, so I don't know if this is the most important, to be honest, but I'll say that it's something that's really, really, really on my mind. And I feel like there's a tension inside of me in parenting and watching, we have grandkids, so they're over, and, obviously when they act up, like, what do you do? And as a grandparent, my role is quite different. So
you give them candy.
Yeah, give them candy. I taunt them and manipulate them with food and sugar. But on a serious note, it's like, I feel like there's this thing that we were teaching, and I think Danny so captured it so well in Loving Your Kids on Purpose, where we're teaching our kids from the time from the time they can learn to make good decisions for themselves. Yeah. So we're giving them options, like, you want to do this or this.
Be powerful.
And I feel like was such a powerful truth, such a powerful truth, because, the religious way is like, do it because I said, and that's the way it is. You listen, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about, And so
it's like strict obedience.
Yeah, strict obedience in the militaristic kind of way. And I think the motto of that era was, to spare the rod to spoil the child. And yet the other side of that is what I'm very deeply concerned about. Now I've watched a generation grow up in that sometimes with people just using that skill, which was never in Danny's heart to say, but I'm thinking the other day, I was just thinking about just laying in my bed, just thinking about like, there is something about learning about authority, the fear of the Lord. And I'm noticing, like in John 15, Jesus said, I no longer call you slave because the slave does not know what his slave does not know what his master is doing, but I call you friend. And I'm like, we'll start out being a slave. So it's like God taught us obedience before he taught us revelation. Before he taught us and here's how these are all the reasons I do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that with our children, I think there's a piece missing in the last couple of generations, and that is, it is important that my son and daughter do something because I said so. I don't think that should be the only tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, totally.
Let me just be clear.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes we swing way the other way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, a police officer is going to pull you over.
Yeah.
And you need to treat him with respect because of the badge he has on.
Yeah.
Your teacher is not necessarily going to give you three choices.
Yeah.
Life, your boss.
Yeah.
Is not necessarily going to tell you why he wants you to do that thing or
care how you feel about it.
And so, and then ultimately, like the bigger picture is God. Like when God tells you to do something, he expects you to obey even if you don't understand. So I think that there's this tension right now inside of me of like, okay, this generation needs to also go, they need to swing back a little towards the middle and say, and be able to say, and be able to learn how to respect authority. Yeah. Because we have a whole generation doesn't respect authority at all now. Yeah. And that's very scary.
Yeah, it is.
So I think that, I don't know if that's a great,
I love it.
Not probably the answer you're looking for, but it's just something that's deeply ingrained in me lately.
Well, I love it. I think the execution of it is as a father of two really small young kids, is both challenging and convicting, right? So, because I have the same thing, the value and importance of trusting without understanding is such a gift, right? If I trust God without having to understand him, believing and knowing that he has my best interest in mind, my life is so much easier.
It is.
Because I don't have to have control of everything. And I don't have to question everything. I can just go, you want me to go over there and do this thing? Great, I'm going to do that. Oh, you want me to, whatever, give my money to this person? Okay, you want me to take this risk? And whether it turns out amazing, whether it turns out bad, like I am not my own. I'm here on a mission.
Yeah.
Your deep love for me is the thing that I'm so sure about and connected to. And I think that that's the piece that I'm trying to navigate and figure out with my little kids. Like I want them to have that obedience because they know the depth of my love and sacrifice for them. And I know that practically, I know that there has to be a practical application for it, right? And I know that it has to be taught and learned. But I think one of the ways that it got, in my opinion, really misused is when, and maybe this is where I would say this is where adults have like rallied against that kind of obedience, is because it didn't feel loving to them. It didn't feel caring to them as a child, right? Dad was just such an a-hole and so disconnected that he just really wanted it his way. It wasn't necessarily actually better for the child.
Yeah.
It was just his way.
Yeah.
And he's doing that to mom and he's doing that to the, and so I do think that the big challenge for me is when I look at Jesus doing it, I just look at it so much it's coming from this massive resource of, I love you. This is actually the best thing for you. I'm not really asking your opinion. If you want to be a follower of me, this is what we're doing. This is the mission. And so, executing that with kids is a challenge.
There's trust and there's also respect.
Yeah.
and there's also the recognition of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things, they don't always flow together.
Yeah.
And I'm just working out in my own mind, because I definitely sat on the other side of that. I was definitely authoritarian from the, maybe not as we all kind of have this comparative thing, not the way I grew up for sure,
No.
but also not the way that I watch people parent now.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of balance in the tension there.
100%. And gosh, I hope I figure it out. Future me, look back and just say, how did you do?
No, we're all part of it. We're all growing, learning.
A friend of mine asked me this question for you. His name's Tim. I think it's a great question. How do you make really hard decisions in blending the prophetic and the practical? Like, because you're a prophet, and I think that there's advantages to being a prophet and having that gift. And what does it look like? And we all know our core value is that we can all hear God and we can all prophesy. Mm-hmm. So I'm not removing anybody from that need, but how do you make decisions, and how does the prophetic play into that? And then when do you just make decisions? Like, obviously you walked in here and said, how are you? You said, it's been a day or something like that. And I know that you have, there's hard things any day that you're alive walking around. There's so many hard things that you're navigating through, because you lead so many different things, from, the school ministry to the church to, your own organization, all that stuff. And there's problems inside of it all. How do you differentiate between, like, I'm solving this problem using the prophetic, and I'm solving this problem this is just my best idea? And how do you solve problems?
Well, I feel like my relationship with the Lord is like anyone else's, in that, sometimes he opens up, a word to me that I know that my goal is to facilitate that and walk it out. And as much as it depends on me, sometimes, often we're giving words to other people, and it's like, okay, well, my job is to deliver the word accurately.
Yeah.
And it's like, from there on, I'm pretty much done. Trying to be a part of making it happen is a bad plan. And then there's the prophetic words that the Lord gives me or for my family, or the people I actually have authority, over or in their lives. And that's a little different walk, because I'm like, okay, so how do I actually, activate these things in our life? How do I act on them? And I think all of that to say that it's not always easy, and timing is important. And, making sure that when you have something really directional, that there are people with authority around you that will look at that word too, and will say, yes, that's the word of the Lord. And then also work through, like, what's the timing of that? How do we walk that out? And then the other side of it is, I think that sometimes we have to be careful that we don't become robots, and that think that God wants to, like, okay, now next step, turn left 3 steps, and then, and we kind of view life as like this, like, we're waiting now for the next thing God's going to say to us. And that's just not, like, the Lord loves free will.
Yeah.
In fact, love does not, if you read 1 Corinthians 13, which actually speaks of the way God loves us before it speaks of the way we're to love others, love doesn't seek its own. So God's not trying, like, okay, it's my way or the highway, bro. Mm-hmm. Listen, I said turn right at the lot. Listen, do it again. Let's try it again. And we just talked about obedience a few minutes ago with the kids.
Yeah.
But also the Lord loves free will. As a matter of fact, if you think about, David, who loved God, he's a man after God's heart. He built a tabernacle that was actually illegal in his day, because the only Bible they had was not just the Old Testament, but the first 5 books of the Bible mostly. And those first 5 books of the Bible, Leviticus gave, Numbers and Leviticus gave a very pointed picture of how God wanted to be worshiped. And David's like, oh, that's great, but let's just put the Ark of the Covenant in the middle, and let's just, like, all worship, like, and then God loved it so much. In Acts 15, he goes, in the last days, I'm going to raise up the tabernacle of David, which is the tabernacle that in his day was illegal. It was not on this side of the cross, but, and so, it's like, it just says to us that God loves passion. He loves people who passionately love him, beyond the book, you know, beyond not anti the book, but beyond the book. And so, you know, I think that when we see our lives as when we see ourselves just as slaves, then we're kind of like waiting for the next word to do something. When we see ourselves as lovers and friends, then we realize that now we have to navigate something that I think is more difficult. And that is, if my wife doesn't tell me take out the garbage and do these 5 things, if I do those 5 things, I know, okay, I did what she wanted.
Yeah.
But the greater challenge is when like today's her birthday, and I'm like, what does Kathy Vallotton really want on her birthday? Like, and so the greater
horse ride.
Yeah. The greater challenge in life really is to live as a son, as a prince, where now I have to navigate not the orders from above, but the heart of God and the heart of my family and the heart of people around me. And that's much more difficult because I have to be present and connected.
Yeah, it's true. So when you're navigating through hard things, right? Like you've got
every day.
You've got people that are upset with a decision that you made, or let's just maybe say you have a really hard decision to make, right? Like, and you're not 100% sure how to make that. How does the prophetic play into that? Or are you not necessarily tapping into the prophetic to help solve that problem? Are you just using wisdom and counsel? Like, what is your process for navigating through?
Well, I mean, my first thing is like, what is the Lord saying? Like, if he has an opinion about this, then I actually don't have a right to another one.
Yeah.
So, you know, if he said turn right, and I'm looking at, you know, I'm at this, you know, at the end of this road, and I can go left or right, and he said turn right. Yeah, I just need to turn right. Like,
how often do you, like, I know I'm cutting you off, but how often do you have like a practical problem, right? Like, let's say that, we need to raise X amount of dollars to cover BraveCo's budget. And you sit down and you ask God, like, what do you want me to do with this? How often do you get an actual direct answer for that?
30% of the time.
30%. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, maybe sometimes more, but yeah. So then I'm just like, okay, now it's just, sometimes the answer the Lord gives you is not the one you want. So then you have to try to, okay, well, again, we talked about sacrifice a little while ago. You know, it's like, all right, well, that's not the way, that's not how, that wouldn't be how I would work it out, you know? And then, you know, and if I don't get an answer, like I don't get like a declaration from the Lord, then I'm asking for wisdom. And sometimes, oftentimes wisdom is found in the counsel of many wise people, not just to counsel a bunch of boneheads. Because, you know, I think that I watch people ask their bonehead friends about things that their friends are failing at.
Yeah, if you don't like your friend's life, if you don't want your friend's life, don't ask them for help on yours.
Totally. If your friend sucks at finances, you know, probably what you're looking for if you go ask him is like, you're looking for comfort instead of real counsel. But yeah, we all suck at it, you know. But if you really want help, you got to go find somebody who's good at what you're, you know, bad at, or what's in front of you. Yeah, not necessarily bad at, but what decision you have in front of you. Yeah, who's good at making these decisions? Yeah.
Gosh, I was just thinking, like, if I could know the answer to all the hard problems in my life, would I want to be able to know the answer just like that? That's a hard question. Know. Yeah.
Well, the question would be, are you going to be obedient to all these right answers that you know?
I know.
Because, you know, I mean, in my opinion, 50% of the problem is knowing the right thing to do. Yeah. The other 50% is
doing the right thing when you know what to do.
The crap. Yeah. Like, you know, I think people think, well, if you make the right decision, then it's going to, you know, it's going to be good. It's smooth. And I could tell you, like, in the season I've been in for the last 3 years, making the right decision is sometimes the harder decision. No, I mean, it's making the right, no, you made the right decision. But if I would have made this decision, it would have been easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is a decision I know is the right one.
Yeah.
And this decision is going to bring me a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and it's like that.
I think
so.
That's
it's
true.
Not just knowing the right thing to do. It's having the, you know, the courage and the compassion and whatever. I mean, I'm thinking about things that are going on in my life this week, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is, I know the right answer, but the challenge is that it's messy. Life is messy.
Yeah.
Life is messy.
Yeah, it's true. Yep. How do you, when you're when you know that your capacity has to grow, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. How do you feel like we go about growing and expanding our capacity to deal with problems, to be a leader, to, carry weight, make big decisions? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you're never going to grow your capacity by avoiding the weights.
Yeah, that's for sure.
How do I grow my capacity to lift more weight? I have to actually go lift more weight.
Yeah.
So, and I think that the way that you grow capacity for leadership is to be involved in leadership at some level. Now, you know what the Peter principle is, and that is when you get promoted beyond your ability to perform. And that mostly happens when you...
Why do they call it Peter principle?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I think somebody told a story about Peter 20 years ago. But basically, when you get promoted beyond your capacity to perform, that, in my mind, is that principle is based around the fact that you either, whoever promoted you put you there, they weren't wise, or you self-promoted. And the challenge there is that, you're not getting a chance to go from step to step to step to step. And, you went to the gym and you could lift, you could bench press 150, and someone puts 500 on there and said, bench that. And you're like, that's going to break me. I'm not going to build up to that.
Yeah.
So I think that, we have to be careful that we don't self-promote. We have to be careful that the responsibility we took on is the one that the Lord's assigned to us. But on the other side of that is, I always feel like in the Lord, you're always slightly over your head. Sometimes you're way over your head if you insist. And that's like, I could lift 150 pounds. I could do 160, and maybe I could do 170. But the deal is that I'm gonna lift a little bit more that's comfortable. And if I'm not careful, I'll get in this mode where I feel like I can't do it. And it's like, I can do it. And that's how I'm going to build muscle.
Yeah.
And, and I think that, in my personal life, I have a lot of capacity for certain kinds of problems and very little capacity for other kinds of problems. Yeah. And I think that, the kinds of problems I have capacity for, I look back, I'm like, oh, those are the kinds of problems I've had a lot in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
I would agree 100% with that. It is always interesting how you look at somebody, you go like, man, how can they do that? Like Riley was over yesterday and my daughter.
Yeah.
And we were talking about her work, and she does a lot of administrative work, and she was talking about doing the paperwork. And I said, oh, babe, how is it for you to do paperwork? She said, oh, I like it. It's easy.
Yeah.
When I sit down to do paperwork, honestly, I get anxiety.
Yeah.
Like filing stuff and keep making notes and like, woof, I can't even handle it. Or you watch people who are just, they can just handle a certain kind of pressure that's like, wow, man, I just don't feel like I have any grace for that, any capacity for it. But then on another side, like I have lots of capacity for certain areas that I've done for a long time. I think a lot of it too is a gift mix, right? It's like the area that you feel good at. But yeah, I've just been thinking.
It's also organization.
Yeah.
To be honest. Like, I'm an organizational freak. So this is, so I'm going to toot my own horn for a minute here, but I'll say this, like, if you came to my shop's super organized and probably cleaner than it needs to be.
Yeah, it's
But
great.
the deal is that when something, like, everybody likes to work in my shop because you know where everything is.
Yeah.
And so if you, when I go over somebody else's place and there's just like, they have all the tools, but where are they? Only God knows. Like, it just makes the job so much harder.
It's chaotic. Yeah.
And I think that some of what happens in our life is that we actually, that's a metaphor now, but we have, like, we organize things. Like we have how do I, like, conflict? I don't just jump in there. It's like, okay, I have tools for conflict. And that isn't, I step in and I tell you what I think.
Yeah.
One of my tools I've learned from Danny many years ago, I don't do it perfectly, but much better, is I sit and listen. And I'm like, okay, what's their side before I it's like, okay, hey, John, I have a problem with da da da. And he's like, okay, well, I'd love to hear your side of the story. And so if I can listen without defense, which is not easy, especially if there's a problem with you or someone or someone you really care about or something you really care about, and it's hard to listen because he's like assaulting your thing. But if you can listen, then you're like, okay. And so you're organizing your tools. It's like organizing your tools.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I listen to him and I ask questions to make sure I understand. And then I pose questions like, have you thought about looking at it like this? Like, have you thought about maybe seeing it that way? And instead of just like all the tools are like, they're in the toolbox someplace and maybe they'll come out somewhere in the conversation, but the conversation might be really damaged when I used like 5 tools. I couldn't find the right tool, so I used something else. And then finally I come upon the right tool, then it's at the end of an argument. And then I walk out of those meetings and I'm like, and this is my old way of dealing with conflict. Like, oh, wow, I wish I would have done that differently. That was not good.
Yeah. Understanding a process and following a process definitely gives you more capacity. For sure. I agree with that 100%. It's what we teach in our marriage course. We're getting ready to do a marriage course and marriage intensive in January. Lauren and I are. And so much of it, we were working on it today. So much of it is, do you understand how to do conflict? Do you understand how to connect? Do you understand how to express your emotions? Like, if you don't know how to do that stuff, then marriage feels overwhelming, right? Like, people don't have any capacity for marriage, and they go home, they don't have any capacity for their wife or for the kids. And it's because you don't actually understand the process. Once you understand the process for communication, the process for conflict. Conflict has a process that if you know how to do it, right? If you understand boundaries and you understand how to seek to understand and how to do reflective listening, and oh my gosh, it's like the same effort that you used to use. Now I'm using that same amount of effort, but I'm getting so much further because I can do the process. That's good, Dad. I love that. That's smart. Okay. We'll just do a couple more.
Okay.
And we'll be done. These are great. What 3 skill sets do you think are most important for men to develop today, and why? You don't have to do 3 if you don't want to, or you could do 5 if you care, if you're really into it.
Well, I mean, obviously learning how to love, and that's, let's just say learning how to love, and then what 3 processes come out of learning how to love. Because it's probably all about learning how to love, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. So, one, I think, being present. And man, isn't it not harder with all let's just scroll some more,
I know.
And it's just really easy to just like relieve the pain of life by being in the fantasy of, scrolling through your Facebook or whatever pages. So I think learning how to be present.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that the times that I have to learn to discipline myself to be present is when we're involved in something I'm not interested in. I mean, I have a problem. Like, guys want to sit down and talk about football or basketball.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not trying to be present. I am present.
Yeah.
I go home and my wife wants to tell me about her day, and sometimes her communication is
she's taking you the 5 mile,
road.
the 5 hour way on
and
a
I'm
2 hour.
Where are we going? Because I always think that sometimes communication with women is the prize is at the end of the road. So being present. So number 2, I think not giving up. It's really easy.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. It's having grit, not giving up. Staying the course, hanging in there. Raising kids is tough. There's no one, if you're halfway decent father, there's no one that you give your life to that much that at seasons shows that little appreciation.
It's true.
Like anybody else that you put a roof over their head, you fed them every day.
Yeah.
You're up at night with them, whatever, all the things that happen with moms and dads. Anybody else would be like, I owe my life to you.
Yeah.
But those little monsters, they go through seasons where they're like, I hate you. You're not a good dad. I'm like, you didn't come with instructions, dude. I did my best,
Yeah, it's true.
And maybe I didn't do my best, but it feels like I
real.
definitely sacrificed. So, like perseverance and grit are important. And then thirdly, I think Bill's book comes to my mind, encouraging yourself in the Lord. Like we all have to figure out, how do we bring ourselves courage? And what I see is what's masquerading as encouraging myself in the Lord is avoiding. Like I have this big avoidance. Like I just don't do it. Like I just don't pay attention. I go, I'm not against watching TV or watching. I love all that stuff. I love to unwind by watching a good basketball game or a football game. I don't think you can just stay engaged in the world we live in 24/7. It's just, at least in my world, it's so much. I have to give my body and my soul a break.
Absolutely.
But there is a place where I just disengage from pain, and I just act like I'm calling it perseverance, but actually I actually don't do it at all. I stay in the marriage, but it's not persevering because I don't do anything to actually make it better.
Yeah, you're not actually in the marriage. You checked out.
I checked out.
Yeah.
I'm in the home, but I'm actually not in the marriage.
Yeah. I like that. I think one of the biggest, you could say it either way. I think one of the biggest mistakes that guys make is they break their own promises to themselves. And I know it's not necessarily a skill set, but the ability to follow through with start what you finish. And I see it a lot. The more I lead men, the more men know what to do, but they don't know how to do it consistently, and they consistently break their promises, which does like three things in my mind. Like the first thing really that it does is you lack confidence now, right? Because I started something and I didn't finish it. So now I'm questioning, can I really do the thing that I really want to do? Do I really have what it takes? Why did I quit on myself? And then you lose tons of momentum and you get really hopeless when that happens. And then you never really meet your full potential. And so you don't have the resources that you would have if you would have just followed through on the thing that you said that you would do. And because everybody knows I should eat well, everybody knows exercising is helpful, everybody knows I should be a good friend and invite people out. Like just the really simple things. We typically look at life and go, what trick, what hack, what hard thing do I need to learn or know how to do in order to feel proud of myself or in order to achieve this success? And most success actually lies in those little tiny small things that I am not able, that I'm unwilling to sacrifice to do every single day to get me to where I want to be. And I often think we all want people to respect us. But when you break your own promises, you don't respect you. And even if you don't admit it, deep down inside, you don't respect you. But we get upset when people don't respect us. And it's an odd thing because I want somebody to do for me what I'm not doing for me. I want somebody to respect me, but I don't actually respect the way that I'm living.
Totally.
And so I think that that's the trap that most men get themselves into is I do enough to feel good about myself, to feel okay with myself, to live with myself, but I don't do enough to feel proud of myself, to go, I'm a good man. And I know I'm a good man because I'm doing everything I actually know to do.
Yeah. I'm
maybe there's
my convictions.
Maybe there's more I should be doing, right? But I don't know that. I don't know how to do the thing I don't know how to do,
Totally.
But I'm waking up on time, waking up early. I'm reading, to learn the Bible and to learn. I'm, following a budget, some sort of budget. I'm working hard when I'm at work. I'm working out, working on my body, whatever. I'm eating. Anyway, like most guys, if they just did what they already know to do, it would change their life.
Totally.
absolutely transform their life.
Yeah. Especially if you did it with passion.
Yeah. Well, Dad, anything else that you feel like, man, I want to give these guys this one piece of advice?
I just want to say that, working hard on the things that are hard is ultimately worth it. And the other thing is, you really can't run from yourself. We see as all of us who are listening to this, and we all know people who went through a divorce. Like, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to divorce. Like,
you're stuck with you.
I'm always saying to the person who comes in, like, okay, let me just tell you that go look up divorce on the psychological pain level. Besides a death of a child, it's the most excruciating pain you can have. And you won't bear it alone. Like, it will get on a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
As we well know because of what we've been through. But so we know it by experience too. So I'm saying, and I use divorce now as just an analogy. It's like, when I divorced myself from the situation, it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go away. I'm going to metaphorically marry another woman, and it's all going to be okay. And it's like
you're stuck with you.
You're
man.
stuck with you. And you're stuck with a person, a human, who has other issues. Maybe not the same ones. And so, the grass is greener on the other side. No, the grass. Well, make sure that's not artificial turf, because that's one problem. And secondly, it's greener on the side you water. And the people that have, most people who have the life you want, they've worked hard for it.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, and I just think that, just really being sure that when we're exiting a problem, that we're really making the right decision.
It's great.
Because hard work does. My mom used to say, hard work does pay off. And I'm like, it doesn't 1,000% of the time, but most of the time it does work out.
Yeah.
Most of the time, hard work does make it better.
Well, being lazy definitely doesn't.
Oh yeah, no. There's a bunch of proverbs about that.
Yeah, I mean the quick pathway to hell is avoid conflict.
Avoid conflict,
right? Avoid doing hard things, man. That's just. And Jordan Peterson says it like this: like, you have to pick your pain. Yeah. Working out and being in shape, really hard. Being out of shape, being obese is also very hard.
Very hard.
Yeah, having a healthy marriage, it's really hard. It's a lot of work. Having an unhealthy marriage, it's so hard.
Really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah. Not being a present dad or being a present dad is super tough, man. Because you got to go be Chickalinda, like I said earlier. Not being a present dad is really tough, super tough. And
sometimes you can delay the pain, but when you delay it, it's like not paying your credit card. Like you call up and you're like, I don't have the money this week. And they go, oh, it's no problem.
No problem.
And then like you keep the interest compounds on the interest. And pretty soon you're like, I remember I didn't pay the IRS and I owed them $9,000. And the first bill I got was $17,000. And I thought that was bad because that was penalties and interest.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we got we'll put you on a 3-year plan. Well, I paid back like $27,000 on $9,000. I'm like,
they were stoked about your deal.
You could put it off, but it will cost you more, right?
Yeah, it's like buying a house in California right now.
Yeah, exactly.
The interest is so high. You buy that house 4 times over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been good.
Dad, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I really appreciate what you're doing for men. And
it's awesome.
It's a great movement.
Yeah, you're such a good man.
Thank you.
Well, BraveCo men, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast this week. If you loved what we're doing here, feel free to share this episode, share our podcast. That's how we grow. It's how we help spread the news and disciple more men ultimately. Also like and comment on the podcast. That helps us grow too. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Stay brave.
God bless.